I never thought a Tuesday afternoon would change everything I believed about justice, power, and the world we live in. My name is Gabrielle, and what I'm about to tell you happened on Flight 447, a flight that started like any other, but ended with a reckoning that shook an entire airline industry. If you love stories where karma catches up with people who abuse their power, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Hit that like button right now, subscribe if you haven't already, because what this flight attendant did to my baby, and what happened when she realized who she'd messed with, will leave you speechless. It was supposed to be a simple trip. My mother had fallen ill back in Detroit, and I needed to get to her quickly. My daughter Nadia was only 6 months old, all chubby cheeks and curious eyes, and I'd be traveling alone with her from Seattle. My husband Cameron had a business meeting he couldn't reschedule, so he'd booked a flight for later that evening. I packed everything I could think of: diapers, formula, extra clothes, pacifiers, toys, essentially half our house stuffed into a diaper bag. Cameron wanted to upgrade my ticket to first class, but I refused. I've never been comfortable with unnecessary extravagance, even though we could afford it. I grew up working class, and some habits die hard. So there I was, economy ticket in hand, wrestling a car seat and a baby through the Seattle airport like millions of other mothers do every single day. I worked as a pediatric nurse before Nadia was born, so I understood babies. I understood their needs, their cries, their rhythms. I thought I was prepared for anything. I had no idea what was coming. When I boarded Sky United Flight 447, I immediately noticed her. The flight attendant working our section had blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Her name tag read Courtney Blackwell. When I struggled to get down the narrow aisle with Nadia in one arm and my bags in the other, Courtney didn't offer to help. Instead, she sighed loudly and said to her colleague, just loud enough for me to hear, "I don't know why people who can't control their children even bother flying." I felt my cheeks burn, but I swallowed the humiliation and found my seat, 23B, middle row, squeezed between a kind-looking elderly gentleman and a businesswoman already asleep against the window. The first hour was peaceful. Nadia nursed during takeoff and fell asleep against my chest. Her little fingers curled around my thumb. I actually relaxed, thinking maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. I texted Cameron a photo of her sleeping peacefully, and he sent back a heart emoji with the message, "See? You've got this. Love you both." I smiled and closed my eyes, letting the hum of the engines lull me into a light rest. Then the turbulence hit. It wasn't severe, just the normal bumps you experience on any flight, but it was enough. Nadia woke with a startled cry, and within seconds, she was wailing. Any parent knows that sound. The sharp, distressed cry means something hurts. I knew immediately it was the pressure in her ears. I tried giving her a bottle, hoping the sucking motion would help equalize the pressure. She refused it, turning her head away and crying harder. I tried the pacifier. I tried rocking her. I tried singing softly. The elderly man next to me smiled sympathetically. "I raised 4 kids," he said kindly. "Sometimes they just need to cry it out. You're doing fine." But Nadia's cries were getting louder, and I could feel eyes on us from every direction. Some passengers looked understanding, others annoyed. I was doing everything I could, but nothing was working. That's when Courtney appeared, standing in the aisle, with her arms crossed, her expression twisted in disgust. "Ma'am," she said sharply, not bothering to lower her voice, "you need to quiet that baby down right now. Other passengers are trying to rest." I looked up at her, exhausted and desperate. "I'm trying," I said, my voice shaking. "She's in pain from the pressure. It's normal for babies during flights. I'm doing everything I can." Courtney's eyes narrowed. "Well, it's not good enough. This is unacceptable. You're disrupting the entire cabin." Something in her tone made my blood run cold. This wasn't just annoyance. This was contempt. I stood up, thinking that walking with Nadia might help calm her. I'd read that movement sometimes soothes babies during flights. But the moment I stepped into the aisle, Courtney blocked my path. "Sit down immediately," she commanded. "I'm just trying to walk with her," I explained, my voice barely audible over Nadia's cries. "Movement helps sometimes." Courtney raised her voice, loud enough that nearby passengers turned to stare. "I said sit down. You're creating a safety hazard." Her shouting only made Nadia cry harder, her little face turning red with distress. I held her closer, trying to shield her from the harsh voice. And that's when it happened. Courtney reached out, and I'll remember this moment for the rest of my life, and slapped Nadia's leg hard. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. Nadia's cry turned into a scream of shock and pain. Time stopped. I looked down at my baby's leg and saw the red handprint already forming on her brown skin. My entire world turned red. "Did you just hit my baby?" I heard myself say, but my voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Did you just put your hands on my child?" The elderly man beside me stood up immediately. "I saw that. She struck the baby." Other passengers started pulling out their phones. I heard the click of camera shutters, the beep of video recordings starting. Courtney's face went pale, but instead of apologizing, instead of showing any remorse, she doubled down. "The child was hysterical," she said defensively, looking around at the other passengers. "Someone had to do something. A little tap to shock her out of it is hardly abuse." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold Nadia, who was still screaming. A woman across the aisle called out, "I'm recording this entire thing. You just assaulted an infant." Courtney's expression shifted to panic, and she pressed the call button. Within seconds, another flight attendant appeared, an older man with kind eyes, and a senior attendant badge that read Robert. Courtney immediately started spinning her version. "Robert, we have a disruptive passenger. Her baby has been screaming for 20 minutes, and when I asked her to control the situation, she became aggressive." I could not believe the lies coming out of her mouth. "That's not what happened," I said, my voice breaking. "She hit my daughter. She slapped my 6-month-old baby." Robert looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. He glanced at Nadia, and I saw his eyes register the red mark on her leg. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I understand you're upset, but I need you to remain calm." "Calm?" I repeated, incredulous. "Your employee just committed assault on my child, and you want me to calm down?" The elderly gentleman spoke up again. "Young man, I witnessed the entire incident. That flight attendant struck this infant. Multiple passengers saw it. We have video evidence." Robert's expression changed. "I see. Courtney, return to the crew cab and I'll handle this." Courtney opened her mouth to protest, but Robert's look silenced her. Before she left, she looked at me with pure venom and said, "Good luck getting anywhere with a complaint. Do you know how many people threaten to sue airlines every day? Nothing ever happens." As soon as I could get a signal, I called Cameron. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, beautiful, how's—" "Cameron," I interrupted, my voice cracking. "A flight attendant just hit Nadia." The silence on the other end was deafening. When he spoke again, his voice was completely different. Cold, controlled, dangerous. "She did what?" I explained everything through tears, trying to keep my voice low. Cameron listened without interrupting, and I could practically feel the temperature dropping through the phone. "Gabrielle, listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice like ice. "Don't say another word to anyone on that crew. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'm handling this right now." He hung up, and I sat there holding Nadia, wondering what he meant by handling this. What I didn't know, what Courtney Blackwell had no idea about, was that my husband Cameron wasn't just successful in aviation. He wasn't just wealthy. Cameron Holloway was the majority shareholder of Skyreach Holdings, a private investment firm that owned 68% of Sky United Airlines. The CEO, the board, the policies, the staff. Technically, Cameron had the power to influence all of it, but he'd always been private about his business, humble almost to a fault. We lived comfortably, but not ostentatiously. I drove a regular car. We lived in a nice but not extravagant home. Cameron had built his wealth through brilliant investments in aviation logistics and infrastructure, but he never flaunted it. He always said money was a tool, not an identity. But right now, on this flight, that tool was about to be used with surgical precision. Cameron made one phone call, just one. He dialed Douglas Werner, the CEO of Sky United Airlines, directly. The receptionist tried to block him. "Sir, Mr. Werner is in a meeting and doesn't take unsolicited calls. If you'd like to file a complaint, I can direct you to—" "Tell Douglas that Cameron Holloway is on the line," my husband said quietly. "Tell him it's about Flight 447, and tell him it's urgent." There was a pause. Then, less than 10 seconds later, Douglas Werner himself picked up. "Cameron," Werner said, and I later learned his voice was already nervous. "This is unexpected. What can I—" "Doug, one of your flight attendants just struck my 6-month-old daughter in the face while my wife was holding her. Flight 447, currently in the air, seat 23B. My wife and child, your employee, committed assault on an infant and then threatened my wife when she tried to report it." The silence on Werner's end must have been profound. Cameron continued, his voice deadly calm. "I want the crew manifest. I want every passenger statement. I want security footage. I want that flight attendant's employment file on my desk before that plane lands. And Doug, her career is over, today." Werner, scrambling, apparently said something about protocols and investigations, but Cameron cut him off. "I don't want protocols. I want action. That woman put her hands on my child. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Within minutes, Captain Martinez received an urgent encrypted message from corporate headquarters. The captain personally came to my seat, his face grave with concern. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, and I noticed Courtney's head snap up from the crew area when she heard my last name. "I've been informed of the incident involving your daughter. On behalf of Sky United, I want to apologize and immediately upgrade you to first class for the remainder of this flight." Courtney rushed over, her face confused and angry. "Captain, with all due respect, she's the one who—" Captain Martinez turned to her with an expression I can only describe as withering. "Ms. Blackwell, you're relieved of duty for the remainder of this flight. Return to the crew cabin and do not interact with any passengers. This order comes directly from CEO Werner himself." Courtney's face went white. "What? On what grounds?" "Corporate will explain when we land. You're grounded, effective immediately." As Robert escorted me and Nadia to first class, several passengers actually applauded. One woman touched my arm and whispered, "I got everything on video. If you need it for court, I'll send it to you." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Courtney watched from the crew area, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror as she started to piece together that maybe, just maybe, she'd made a catastrophic mistake. When Flight 447 landed, there was a welcoming committee that Courtney definitely wasn't expecting: police officers, paramedics, and 3 senior executives from Sky United Airlines, all looking absolutely terrified. I was escorted off the plane first, and paramedics immediately examined Nadia. The bruise on her leg was documented, photographed, and medically cleared as minor, but definitively caused by blunt force. 6 passengers volunteered statements on the spot. The elderly gentleman who'd sat next to me told the police officer, "I've flown for 40 years, and I've never seen anything like this. That woman struck an infant out of spite, plain and simple." Courtney was escorted off the plane by security, still in her uniform, looking dazed. And that's when she saw Cameron. He was waiting near the gate in a tailored charcoal suit, looking calm and collected, holding a coffee. When I walked up with Nadia, he immediately took our daughter, inspecting her leg with the gentlest touch, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle working. Courtney walked past with her security escort, and I saw the exact moment she connected the dots. She stopped, staring at Cameron, then at me, then back at Cameron. "Wait," she said, her voice small. "You're her husband?" Cameron didn't even look at her. Douglas Werner arrived moments later, practically running through the terminal, sweating despite the air conditioning. "Cameron, Gabrielle, I cannot express how deeply sorry. Cameron finally raised his eyes, and Werner actually took a step back. We'll discuss this in private, Doug, not here. Courtney, still standing there with security, finally understood the magnitude of her mistake. Mr. Holloway, she said, her voice shaking. I didn't know who, I didn't realize. Cameron turned to her then, and his voice was quiet but cutting. You didn't know what, exactly? That you shouldn't hit babies? That assaulting a 6-month-old child is wrong? Please explain to me what you didn't know, because I'm very curious. Courtney's face crumpled. I've worked here for 12 years. I was stressed. The baby wouldn't stop crying, and I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Please, I have bills. I have a mortgage. I need this job. My voice surprised me when I spoke. So you assaulted her? Courtney turned to me, tears streaming down her face now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. No, I said quietly, holding Nadia closer. You weren't, but you were thinking enough to lie about it, to threaten me, to tell me nothing would happen. Douglas Werner stepped forward, his voice formal. Ms. Blackwell, effective immediately. Your employment with Sky United Airlines is terminated. Security will escort you from the premises. You'll receive information about final pay and benefits by mail. Courtney broke down completely. Please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll pay for therapy. Cameron's voice cut through her pleading. You'll do nothing. You had a position of authority over vulnerable people, and you abused it. The fact that my daughter's mother happens to be my wife is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you hurt a child and felt entitled to do it. That's why you're done. Security led her away, still crying, and I felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just a bone-deep exhaustion. But Cameron wasn't finished. Over the next few weeks, he didn't just let Courtney's firing be the end of it. He ordered a complete investigation into passenger complaint protocols at Sky United. 3 supervisors who had histories of dismissing passenger complaints about crew misconduct were reassigned to non-customer-facing positions. Cameron implemented mandatory training across the entire airline about handling families with infants, about de-escalation, about basic human dignity. He hired child development specialists to create the curriculum. When Courtney tried to sue for wrongful termination, claiming she'd been fired because of my husband's influence rather than her actions, the case was dismissed within a week. 6 passenger testimonies, 4 videos, medical documentation, and her own recorded statements to the crew buried any chance she had. She was blacklisted from the aviation industry entirely. I later learned she tried to get work with 3 other airlines, and all 3 rejected her application the moment they saw the incident report. My story went viral. #Flight447 trended for 3 days. I received thousands of messages, some supportive, some calling me privileged, some from other mothers sharing their own horror stories of mistreatment while traveling with children. The Today Show wanted an interview, so did CNN. I declined all of them. This wasn't about fame. It was about accountability. Cameron and I donated $1 million to organizations that support traveling families, including funding family rest areas in major airports and subsidizing travel costs for families dealing with medical emergencies. Sky United's customer satisfaction scores actually improved dramatically over the next 6 months as the new training took effect. Flight attendants reported feeling more confident handling difficult situations. Families reported feeling more respected and supported. People ask me if I feel guilty about Courtney losing everything. The answer is no, I don't. She didn't lose her job because my husband is wealthy. She lost it because she hid a baby, my baby. Cameron's position just meant she couldn't hide behind corporate indifference and bureaucratic delays. It meant justice happened swiftly instead of getting buried under paperwork and legal departments protecting the company's interests over a child's welfare. If I'd been anyone else, if I'd been the single mother with no connections, the woman traveling alone who nobody would believe, Courtney probably would have gotten a write-up in her file and continued working. That's what makes me angry. Not that she was held accountable, but that accountability so often depends on who you are rather than what's right. 3 months after Flight 447, I was at the park with Nadia, watching her discover grass for the first time. Giggling as the blades tickled her palms, Cameron sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee, and said quietly, "Do you regret any of it? The publicity, the attention, all of it." I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I finally said, "because every time I fly now, I see the changes. I see flight attendants who've been through the new training treating families with patience and kindness. I see mothers who look less stressed, less afraid of being judged." Nadia won't remember Flight 447, but maybe someday I'll tell her about it. I'll tell her that her parents fought for what was right, and that speaking up, even when you're scared, even when you're alone, matters. Cameron kissed my temple. "She's lucky to have you as a mother. We're lucky to have each other," I corrected. "If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, I need you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have stayed silent? Would you have fought back? This isn't just about one terrible flight attendant or one powerful family. It's about the fact that justice shouldn't depend on your bank account, your connections, or your last name. It should depend on what's right. Stand up for the vulnerable, protect the innocent, and never, ever underestimate what a mother will do to protect her child. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that accountability matters, that actions have consequences, and that sometimes, just sometimes, karma comes through exactly when it's needed most.